Welcome to Behind the Shield, episode 41. Today, we touch base with Spartan baseball alum Scott Day. Hello again, everybody. Scott Guys joining you for another episode of Behind the Shield. We've been off for a little bit, but happy to be back at it as the semester has started for the Spartans. And today, we talked to Scott about a wide variety of things. He's a well-known athletic communications professional, having stops at VCU, Richmond, and Delaware. But more importantly, we're going to touch on some issues like mental health and how helping others has really become a passion of Scott. So after this commercial break, we'll be back with Scott Day.
You've probably heard a lot about changes on campus, about how classes will look a little different, or how the dining hall won't be set up like it was last year. You may have heard we'll be living with a new normal. But the truth is, at York College of Pennsylvania, normal has never been our thing. If by normal you mean predictable, usual, commonplace, average, that's not us. Our normal is extraordinary, exceptional, remarkable. Our normal is about taking responsibility, thinking of others, and treating people with respect. Here, normal means being compassionate. It means protecting the person next to us to ensure safety and good health for all of us, because we know we're in this together. For us, wearing masks and social distancing aren't really a new normal. They're just another example of what's always been important to us. Joining efforts to find real solutions to achieve our goals, to help our community thrive, and to show that we care. That's not a new normal. That's our normal, and we are grateful that you're a part of it. Welcome home, Spartans.
Welcome back to episode 41 of Behind the Shield. Today, we welcome Spartan alum, former baseball pitcher, Scott Day. Scotty, thanks for coming and joining us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure, guys, and always a pleasure to be back at York and being around. And this is the better looking day, brother.
There is no question about that. Well, why don't you update us what you've been up to since graduation and toeing the rubber for the Spartans?
Yeah, I mean, I graduated in 2005, and obviously I worked in your office for 2 years, but it was obviously a lot different back there. And you and I always joke about how I didn't really know I was going to get into this field, but that's exactly what I did. I graduated and didn't really know where I was going to go. I graduated with a mass comm degree and just had no direction, really. I was just trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to be involved in sports. So I took an internship at Monmouth University in the communications field. And it was my first kind of taste of Division I, obviously being at York. And it was just a different experience. You kind of broke up sports and allowed you to get really close to the teams you were covering. So I was literally living, I think it was like 2 blocks from the beach near Monmouth. And that was my first year. And I mean, this was 2005. So I wasn't, it was $1,300 a month and just kind of grinded away. So I went back to kind of the lessons you learn as a student athlete and instilled by my parents, and just grinded for a year. And then went from there and got a full-time position at Virginia Commonwealth, VCU, down in Richmond in the communications field. And then quickly ascended there and just kind of really tried to stick out with my work ethic and what I was putting forth. And the career kind of took off from there. I was the head of the communications office at VCU at the age of 26 when we hired Shaka Smart to take over basketball. And then 2 years later, we went to the Final Four, and everything kind of went from there. And then I spent 2 years. So I was at VCU a little over 10 years in the comms field. Did 2 years at the University of Richmond, went across town, did 2 years at University of Richmond, the same type of position. And then about 2.5 years later, a position came open at Delaware, my home state. And kind of took over that role and was in that for a little over 2 years, 2.5, I guess. And then, like kind of millions of Americans and lots of people across the country, budget cuts and everything forced to job elimination. So just been kind of over the last few months doing a bunch of different things, but mainly the main thing I'm focused on right now is I'm working for with a foundation, Unlock the Light, which is mental health foundation here in Delaware. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but that's what I'm up to now.
What was the Final Four run like at VCU? I know what it was like at York, and a little bit different scale, obviously. And Shaka seems like such a great guy. I know we've talked about, his personality and what he brings to the table, but What was it like to go on a run like that and be a part of it? You're with the guys all the time. You're with the team. You're traveling. You're part of it. How much fun was that for you professionally?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that you have a lot of pinch me moments during it, but also during it, you're trying to figure out what the heck is going on. I think I averaged probably 3 to 4 hours of sleep a night during those 4 weeks. And we were also having our first kid during that. So my wife was pregnant. We were buying our first house, and we had bought a car that spring. So I don't advise that. I don't advise that at all. But it was just one of those magical things that happen. And there's actually a documentary. I think it's on Amazon. It's on one of the streaming platforms. And I watched it during quarantine because it had been forever. I had kind of tuned back in, and you just have those moments. It's like, holy crap! Like, did that really happen? And I think that was the real first moment as a professional. Obviously, you have them as a student athlete, but as a professional, where you see how much a team matters and how much all those intricacies and all those cliches you hear from your coaches growing up, all that comes forth. I mean, that's what happened. I mean, it was a magical 4 weeks.
Do you feel like when you're embedded, I've always said every time a team does something the first time, the first time you go to the NCAA tournament, the first time you win a conference championship, those first times, there's never going to be a time like that again. Did you have that feeling as you were kind of going through the late part of the season that this team had a chance, maybe not to go to the Final Four? Because let's be honest, that's probably an unrealistic expectation. But this team was something special. Did you start to realize that during the year?
There were moments throughout the year. I mean, they were as talented as could be, obviously. But I mean, yeah, you also, at the moment, Shaka was, I think, 33, I want to say, that 33, 34 maybe. There's a lot of different parts. There were several of our kids who were held over from the previous staff. So it was all this mixing and changing and trying to figure out what worked. There were probably 1 or 2 games that really stick out that we won at Wichita State during, I think it was Bracket Busters in February, and they were really good at that point. And that one kind of stuck out. But I mean, honestly, if you look at the schedule, we stunk in February. I think it was the last 3 or 4. And I mean, the famous story is that we got to the conference tournament and Shaka burned literally a piece of a calendar of February and moved on to March. And we went in and made a run in the tournament and the CAA tournament, and then got the at-large berth, and everything kind of exploded from there.
Yeah, exploding is a mild understatement. What are some of the things that you took as a leader from him? Were you able to learn some things in terms of, and here it is, this young guy coming in, just full of, just exuberant. He's a Division III guy. He has all these things, these similarities. What were some of the things that you took from him just in your everyday life of leading your team, your communications team, and doing things from a leadership position? What are some of the things you learned from him?
There's a lot of moments. I think we all do this, but I think there's a lot of moments where you kind of step back and be like, oh, wow, there's a lot you took from him. And I think the best part about Shaka and I was literally, I took over as the head of that office and the basketball contact when he got hired. So we kind of grew together. He was among the youngest head coaches at the Division I level at that point. I believe I was either the first or second youngest at the Division I level as the head of an office at that point. So we kind of grew together. And obviously when you have an experience like the Final Four and you're getting 600 to 700 media requests a week, you just learn. You learn together and you kind of figure it out. So that side of things we figure out together. I think the 2 things that I thought he taught me the best was really investing in relationships and understanding the importance of that investment. And then surrounding yourself with people you really trust and that make you better. I think every leader in cliche will say, oh, don't be the smartest person in your room, surround your people, whatever. That's a lot harder said than done. It just is. As a leader, it just is. Because the natural instinct is, well, you're in a leadership position. You have to make the decision. Well, you do, but you have to really understand how to utilize. And that staff is an unbelievable staff. I mean, it was all three are head coaches right now at the Division I level. Shock has had a bunch of people at the Division I level that have come through that are head coaches now. So he's just an unbelievable leader in that role, but he never truly lost sight of who he was. I can give you countless examples of him really stepping up, showing who he was as a person that were never seen by anybody else. And I think the other thing he always preached, and it was one of his 5 core values, was appreciation and just understanding how to appreciate people. And I'm sure he would say it, and I'm sure every person would say, oh, you could do a better job at appreciating, but really understanding the moment. And that's what I try to instill in the people around me that I lead and my family.
Is it weird to see him with hair now? Every time I turn into a Texas game, I'm like, who's that guy?
Yes.
That's Shaka? Like, first of all, I think he looks 10 years younger anyway. But it's like, who is this guy? It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, speaking to a bald man himself, I think some people are meant to have hair and some people aren't. And it's a different look. I mean, it's interesting, but I think he's rolling with it right now.
Hey, you got to be comfortable with what you are. All right, I want to change directions a little bit. I want to talk about your experience at York as a student athlete. Obviously, you played baseball for 4 years. I think the greatest compliment that I can give you is you were truly a pitcher. You knew how to get guys out despite having, we talk about sometimes some guys have stuff and some guys just don't. But let's be honest, you were very successsul.
I can't wait to see the comment section by my former teammates.
Yeah, I'm sure the former teammates are going to have a field day because they always do. That's hey. But you know what? You can just point back to your record and say, hey, this is what it was.
I always do.
Talk a little bit about being part of the program. You come in as a freshman. You're obviously familiar with the program a little bit because Matt played here. But what do you take out of that? What did you take from it? Obviously, that can be a pretty long list of things, but what are some of the highlights of things that you look back on and go, man, I'm so glad I got to be a part of this program because of this?
Yeah, I mean, I think I look back and you cherish so many moments. But I came in as a freshman. Obviously, Matt and his group were seniors at that point. And you come in, and obviously me already having a brother who's on the team who's an All-American, who's well-known around campus, I kind of settled into just being the freshman little brother type of thing. And there are definitely moments that I've thought about. I don't know if I fully took advantage of having my brother around me and enjoying that relationship. I fully remember we were down at Salisbury and not having a good game. And it was, I think I only threw 13 or 14 innings that freshman year, but it was kind of one of those, everybody was coming out of the bullpen, trying to get somebody out. And I remember Maddie coming to the mound and saying Maddie things to me to try to, and that was something, a moment that you kind of cherish. I mean, there's not a ton of people out there who have the opportunity to play college baseball with their brother. But obviously the run that we went on that year and being a part of that team and seeing how those seniors operated, I mean, that was obviously a big class that left. And from there, it was an opportunity for us to step up as leaders. And the next year, it was kind of a crossover year of some guys being left over from that team, the older guys, and a few younger guys. And it was kind of a mixture of a bunch of different personalities, and tried to fit my role there. I guess statistically, if you want to look, that was probably my best year. And I think it was the best as far as preparation. I went into that summer knowing Maddie and that group's gone. That it's not Maddie's team anymore. I mean, it's an opportunity for somebody to step up, and I prepared that way. And I threw the ball really well. I was in the best shape I had, and then I settled into a team captain role. I look back and really think what could have happened at that point if I really stayed focused. But sometimes you're an idiot and a 20-year-old kid. And I probably could have been more committed. And there's definitely opportunities as a leader you just learn and try to grow in. But the relationships, we made regionals as a junior, just missed as a senior. So it was a program that always had success. Obviously, Paul and I have a good relationship when we get to see each other. And I think thinking about what I've taken from that is really understanding the details, of the importance of the details. I mean, I think of every blade of grass. I mean, every blade of grass in the Day household, if you know my dad, is taken care of. And it was the same way at York, obviously. But going down to polishing our cleats before games, and even a little thing I still do, but like how we left hotel rooms, and that like how we left towels in a certain way, and like not leaving in a mess, and little details like that you try to keep as you go throughout life, and understanding how important those little details are as you go throughout life.
Do you find as you coach your kids that you're saying stuff that coach would have said, and not even and doing things like you normally did? Little things like making sure the dugout's cleaner than what you found it, making sure that you're treating your teammates the right way. You know, all those things that you experienced as a player, you are now giving it. Does it feel weird to kind of pass that along to your kids?
Well, my oldest is only 9, so I can't say some of the things that Paul said to us, but but I mean, there are definitely moments that I'll say to my 9-year-old, there's no excuses. And I was like, oh, but I mean, the cleaning of the dugout, and I am blessed to have 2 guys who I've coached with since I've been back in Delaware, who have become really good friends of me and think along the same ways. We're very different personality wise, but we really think along the same ways in that regard. And I do. I mean, there are absolutely lessons that I take back to the 2 coaches that were most important in my life, which were my dad and Paul, and the lessons that they instilled in baseball and in life. I mean, because that's the way it is. I mean, you take the lessons that you learn on the field, and there's all those cliches of learning how to deal with failure, learn how to deal with success, bouncing back, that type of thing. And that's how you do it. I mean, that's how you go throughout life. I mean, I remember I don't know how long you kept it up, but we had the little chart in the dugout of win the inning. Win the inning. And that's somewhat how I talk about with my 9-year-old and 7-year-old when we're playing. Like, just win the inning of life. Like, win today, win the day. I mean, I think it was Chip Kelly at Oregon. The win the day, like that's how, like that became popular, but that's what it was. Win the inning was win the day, win the next one, win the next one, win the next one. And that's what I try to really instill in my kids and the kids I coach.
That transitions nicely into the next topic. Mental health for you has been something that is something that's really important to you, and really, quite frankly, should be important to all of us. But I think in athletics and in society in general, that is a topic that we kind of shy away from. That's a topic that we don't want to talk about because for some reason it's taboo. It's things that kind of people want to push off to the side. You have really focused on that. That's something that's deeply personal to you, deeply important. And the organization that you're working with now clearly is something that's had an impact on you, and something you're hoping to be able to impact others. Talk about your view of mental health and student athletes and people in general, and why it's so important to you.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny that's how you address it, because that's how I thought of it. I mean, growing up, I mean, you think of it, and particularly as a male student athlete, just be tough and move on. Just be tough and move on. And I mean, I always used to say internally, and I don't know if I ever said it verbally, but the people who were, I'm depressed, they're just having a bad day or whatever. And that's not. I have learned so much over the last, in particular, 5 or 6 years, about the depression and mental health side, and how the chemicals and everything else affects everybody. Because that's what I went through. I mean, I went through. My career took off, and we talked about the Final Four, but I mean, I was 26 at the time, or 27. I can't do math right now. I think it's 27. But my career took off. I mean, and then we had 3 kids in the matter of 5 or 6 years, and everything kind of happened and snowballed really quickly. And I came in second for, I think, 3 straight jobs, I want to say. So the career was kind of getting stuck a little bit. And I just wasn't in a great space mentally. And I mean, my mom, so she's never shy to say anything. So she said to me, I particularly remember the conversation. She said, Scott, you need to talk to somebody. You need to find somebody. And I just blew it off. I completely blew it off, like you do for a lot of the things you do with your mom. And I can go back and probably say there's probably 3 or 4 people who were in my circle, and I'll probably talk about that later on, but that I don't think necessarily were bad people, but they weren't good people to be in my circle at that time. And I was leaning on things that I didn't grow up as. And Maddie, me, and our family, but we're a very faith-based family. And I felt like I should try to stray away from my faith a little bit. And it sent me down a dark path. I mean, and there was 2 years that were really, really bad. Marriage was really tough. I lost relationships within my family, and really struggled. I don't shy away from it. There was 3 instances that I came really close to ending my own life. But the spot at Delaware kind of opened up at the exact right time. You and I have talked about it over and over again. The timing is always perfect. I know that, again, cliches all over the place here, but it opened up.
Everything happens for a reason. I mean,
yeah.
I'm convinced of that in my own personal life and in general, but everything happens we don't always know what that reason is, but we know that it happens for a reason.
Yeah. And so I took the job, and it was an opportunity to reset. If you would have asked me 5 to 8 years ago, I would have never said I would have come back to my home state. But it was a perfect opportunity to reset, not only myself, mentally, physically, every aspect of me, but also my family, which is probably most important, and my faith. So it really allowed me to reset everything. And probably about 3 or 4 months after that, I decided to really open up about my battle with depression and mental health. It allowed me to open channels that I never thought were ever going to be open. And have since had conversations with student athletes, former and current, that are really powerful conversations to have. The October after I graduated, one of my good friends from high school committed suicide, completely unexpectedly. I was literally going to be hanging out with him like 2 nights before, and we ended up not being able to connect. And then never had another opportunity. So I think that was probably my first real dose of it. But really understanding what goes into that, and how much people are struggling with it, and how taboo it is, to be open about it. So I try to use my social platforms, to be outspoken about what I've been through, and what other people are going through. I think we see so much crap, I'll say, if I'm allowed to say, on social media. But I really try to be an advocate, like you said, for this area and mental health. And because I do think it's a huge issue that people need to be outspoken. I mean, I'm sure you've seen it in your kids, but I have a 9-year-old who absolutely battles anxiety. He's 9. Like, I don't need him worrying about whether he's going to be perfect. He's 9.
And I think that is one of the things that I think you are incredibly great at on social media, is you're very honest. You know, if we're going to have a conversation about mental health, I think we all need to be honest in terms of how we present it, in terms of how we talk about it. It's not pretty. Yep. It sometimes is very difficult to talk about. It sometimes is very painful to talk about, very personal. But I think the ability that you've shown to be able to open up to people and be honest, I think is a great way to start the conversation. And I think that is a way for you to not only help yourself,
Yep.
but to also reach out and help others. How does that translate into what you're doing with the organization, the foundation you're with now? And what are some of the things that you're excited about, the potential of this position to grow and this to kind of, blossom and be able to help a lot of people?
Yeah, I mean, I think I really saw since kind of going open or opening up, I guess, back in 2018 about my journey, people are pretty comfortable coming to me and talking with their situations. And I've seen the need to be open with these student athletes. I mean, you've done it for however many plus years, 60, 70, I don't know how old you are, Scott. But I mean, the 18 to 22-year-old are so impressionable. And these kids these days have so much pressure on them. Mm-hmm. And everything is documented. Everything they do in their lives are documented. But on the contrary, they also have an opportunity to be able to brand themselves and be open. And that's the way I've tried to do it, but it's allowed me to have conversations with, I've had 2 situations at Delaware, when I was working at Delaware, that coaches or student athletes called me in pretty dire straits. And I was able to kind of have the conversation and help make decisions and lead in a different way. And I thought that was a power of relationships, and I understood that. And so obviously when everything happened at Delaware, it was an opportunity for me to step back and kind of understand what's next. And this was an area that has a huge need. So Unlock the Light was started actually in 2018, I believe. There's a former student athlete at Delaware who took his own life. His dad started this foundation in his name. His name was Sean Locke. He played basketball. Was a Delaware kid. And so this past fall, they opened up Sean's house, which is a place on campus at Delaware, which is literally, it is a block from the closest dorm, but it's actually where Sean lived when he was at Delaware. And they've turned it into a safe haven. It's open 24/7 for emergencies, and 8 to 8. The door's open. Anybody can come. They've got a library with a ton of resources. They've got a peer support group. It's just an unbelievable foundation to really have in place that kids can go to. And it shows the power of the relationships that you can have with people. I'm excited for the opportunity to possibly grow more in a position. They have an annual basketball tournament. They're going to have all sorts of functions to kind of raise money and give resources to kids that are 14 to 24 who just need to come on off the street. They've had people come in at 11 o'clock at night and 12 o'clock at night in emergency situations. So I would say that they're literally saving lives with this foundation. And you and I have talked about it with our jobs, but we love our jobs. There's a lot of different parts of it, but it's the people that make the job special. And that's what life to me is all about. It's impacting the people around you. And that's what this foundation allows me to do.
How can people help? Obviously, it's not necessarily maybe with you in Delaware, but how can people, in your opinion, help in general? How can we make it a little easier to talk about? How can we help? Because I think, one thing you touched on is our kids nowadays, our college kids, our own children, are bombarded by social media and constantly being in touch. And I think constantly having a feeling of comparison. I think our kids are constantly comparing themselves to other people, fairly or unfairly, most often unfairly. How can we help make things better for kids just in general and help them out?
Oof, that's a great question. It is never an easy topic. And there's a ton of cliches, and I've had a ton of conversations with different people, both student athletes, professionals. I think really understanding where the journeys have taken them, and understanding how different how just different people are wired. I have a lot of, you mentioned the comparison thing. Maddie and I, that is something I've always struggled with. And my mom and dad will tell you that since I was, 2 or 3. We're very, very different. Obviously I'm much better looking. But we're very, very different people. I see in my own household, my 9 and 7-year-old are completely different, but they have such different personalities, and how do you use them? And I've looked back and say, how the heck did I end up within 60 seconds of ending my own life? Like, I grew up in the suburbs. I was I mean, there was never a doubt internally as a kid and growing up, that anything was wrong. I mean, I had a kid, I mean, I had a car and I had everything else. And I mean, everything was given to me. And I look at student athletes that I've worked with, and they're growing up in much worse situations. And that's how it is with people. It just happens in different times. And I think really being open and understanding where people are coming from and just being an ear. My wife is still learning about how to deal with some of the stuff that comes with being my spouse. But I mean, that she's an angel for many reasons. But she's taught me a lot. But I think it's really understanding, reading about it, being open to it, and understanding that these kids have, like you said, social media is there and it's not going away ever. And there's a ton. I mean, and I love social. I actually love social media for the good that's there, for the being able to post funny stories about my kids or pictures or whatever else. Because I do. I mean, I have family in Nevada. I have family in Maryland. I mean, especially now when nobody's able to really track everything, it's an opportunity to share, kind of be open and connect with people. But they have a ton of pressure, and just being there and understanding that these kids need resources and outlets.
And I think too, being genuine with our kids, having an honesty about, hey, if you need to talk about something, I'm not going to claim that I have the answers, because I don't, but I'm certainly happy to listen and invest in relationships. I think it goes back to what you talk about with Shaka, about investing in relationships and why that's important, why it's important to be able to invest in people. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how good a job we do with our profession, but it's the legacy that we leave with people. And I think that is ultimately our most important thing. So I want to thank you for taking the time. This has been fantastic. I appreciate you allowing me to catch up. One more question, and we touched on it a little bit before.
Bring it on, bud.
So what's it like to be the friend of a celebrity? I mean, Zach Clark, let's go. This guy, I will tell you. So you had invited me to go on a Zoom call, and I think it was April, right? Yep. Right around that time. And he happened to jump on the call for a little bit, and it was like, hey, yeah, by the way, I'm going to audition for The Bachelorette. Like, it was no big deal. Like, it was just like, yeah, whatever, that's what I'm going to do. He goes out, he gets picked, and he wins, which is incredible. But talk a little bit about Zach and your relationship with him, and how it's kind of, it's different. It's a little different than what it was before.
Yeah, I mean, it's hilarious to kind of look back, and I mean, I've told that Zoom story a million times to people around here, and say, yeah, we were just kind of having a Zoom with some old teammates, and that happened, and he popped on, and everything spiraled from there. And every Tuesday, there was a group text of, I don't know, 16 or 17 of us that was just, I mean, I know the Bachelorette viewership went way up this year from the Spartans. But I mean, I typically go to bed pretty early, and there was a couple things I was doing early in the morning. So I would wake up to 50, 60 text messages of this chain. So it was great. And Clarky and I have kind of kept up even before it through Instagram, actually, kind of seeing a little bit about what he's doing with his foundation, and then his journey a little bit. And like you see, like college teammates, you go and you kind of lose touch. I mean, it happens. And I mean, the guys I lived with for 3 or 4 years, I mean, we're in states all over the place. And I think we've seen each other here and there, but not a ton. But it was a chance to reconnect, and it's been great. Clarky and I, it's funny because Clarky and I hated running together. I mean, we would have to run so many poles.
And now he's a marathoner. I mean, come on.
Like, him and I are both like running, like we're actively running, which is hilarious. And in so many ways, just it's great. I mean, it is great to see what he is doing. And I think the theme of what we've talked about today, you see it in what he's doing every day, is impacting the lives around him. And with his foundation organization that he's running in New York, and his journey and his story, there's incredible power in everybody's story, where no matter where they are. And that's why I think I loved what I was doing so much in the communications field, is because I got to understand so many stories. But I think I would leave with telling people to understand and learn the actual story behind people, because there's power in everything. I think Clarkie is a perfect example of that. I still don't know probably all of everything that he dealt with and was dealing with. But to see what he's doing nowadays is pretty awesome.
No, there's no doubt. And I want to give you a quick second. Your last year, you look a lot different than what you looked a year ago.
Yeah.
Tell us about it. I mean, I think that's awesome, as obviously somebody who's kind of gone on a little bit of a similar journey.
Yep.
How much better do you feel? Like, and for you, like, how hard was it?
It was. I mean, so when I was at the depths of my battle, my mental health battle, I was 340, 335, 340. I mean, I've always been a big guy. I mean, you can look at every picture and hopefully you choose a good picture for this, Scott. But it's a, so when I got to Delaware, I knew I wanted to kind of change. So I dropped from 340-ish. I was probably 320, 330 when I got to Delaware. And I got into the 270s, 280s. And then when everything happened in March, I just made it a routine of getting up and walking. I walked for an hour to start, and then made 2 hours, and then added running. But I think I'm probably down to right where I was my sophomore year. I was probably about 210, 215, which is where I was my sophomore year. And that was probably the healthiest. And I text with Buddy different workout. I was literally texting this morning about different workout plans and with some buddies of mine. And I never would have thought I would have been here, but it's been awesome to have that transformation, to be able to play with my kids and understand what the benefit long-term will be from being healthy.
Well, and I kind of look at it too. It's hard to take care of other people if you don't take care of yourself first. And I do think that's really important.
Amen.
Well, Scoot, thanks so much for joining us. It was a great time to catch up. Hopefully, post quarantine, we'll get to hang out, maybe play a little golf, hit the ball all over the yard.
Literally all over.
That's what we do.
By the way, we made it this far, and that's the first time you called me Scoot.
I know. I'm trying to have an air of professionalism in this thing. So, but yeah, it was great to catch up with you. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Take care of yourself. Take care of that family, and we will touch base soon.
Thanks, Scott.
All right. Take care.
On our platform. Happy to have you along.
We want to thank Scott Day for taking the time to talk to us today. Great to catch up with Scoot and really see what he's doing, having an impact in people's lives when it comes to mental health, and certainly a subject that really we all need to talk about a little bit more and be a little bit more open. But it's wonderful to see what the impact he's making on the people around him. That'll do it for this edition of Behind the Shield. We will be back with a new episode next week. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and go Spartans.